I feel different.
They call me the Wanderer, yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wanderers YouTube channel. I am your host, as always, Ventura, and we are back once again with Dragon Ball Infinity. It's been quite a long time since we last covered Dragon Ball Infinity on the channel, so much so that it's gotten up to Chapter 10 at this point. And, well, there's no time like the present in my opinion, and we're here with Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Where we last left off with the story of Dragon Ball Infinity, Taima had just beaten his old master Brood in one-on-one combat, in a match declared by Lord Noob. For the sake of both of their families, they fought one another, and Taima was the victor after unlocking a unique transformation. However, this high of victory would not last long, as an enraged Taima charged at Noob, intending to beat him. However, he would find that Noob is not so easily defeated. And picking up with Chapter 5, we see his friend Reiki healing his battle damage that he occurred during the fight, and healing the damage that Lord Noob distilled upon him as well. Reiki giving a brief synopsis of the events that happened immediately after Taima's knocking out. Brood was taken from the arena, healed, and put in charge of training members of Noob's army, and traders of Noob returned from the docks to tell him that a magical barrier had been put around the middle of the Nile, and it starts directly at the entrance of the Fountain of the Gods. Taima interjecting with his own question about the whereabouts of his mother, Reiki unfortunately not having the answer to this question. It would seem that matters of much more grave importance are on his mind, as it would seem that war is upon him and that his current future looks very grim. He was telepathically contacted by Mirai and asked him to teleport Taima directly to him. Taima being quick to point out that if he could always teleport away, why hasn't he escaped at this point? Essentially, Reiki can't teleport himself because the danger and amount of effort it takes to do so is very dangerous. Once he did help Brood escape from prison the night that Taima went on a rampage under the full moonlight. Realistically, he could have helped him escape at any point in the future. However, Brood refused, as he did not want to endanger his family by him obviously escaping prison. Taima, calming down after this explanation, asks his friend what he will do about himself, and Reiki basically just says, "Don't worry about me, I need to get you out of here first." Within a few seconds, Taima is teleported directly in front of the master of Reiki, the same man that we once saw in the Fountain of the Gods so long ago. Funnily enough, that's exactly where Taima is at this current juncture in time, the Island of the Gods. Although he looks far, far different from the last time we saw him, Taima quick to point this out. Apparently Mirai had stopped drinking from the fountain, since he inevitably planned to destroy it. However, Genzai didn't like the idea very much. Although quickly breaking the immediate reunion, Taima asks why he is here. Mirai essentially goes on to explain everything that we already pretty much know about Lord Noob, that he is a manipulative, greedy, power-hungry dictator to his people, refusing to evolve their society's standards of technology for the simple means of controlling the people. He abuses them, and for all the times that Mirai has voiced his concerns, it falls obviously on deaf ears. However, Mirai takes this even further in suggesting that he has controlled every aspect of Taima's life since he arrived on the planet, every event having a purpose. Mirai explains that the day that he arrived on the planet, him and his brother drank from the fountain together, and he received the strongest and farthest reaching vision he had ever seen into the future to date. He saw and bore witness to the gods of the future. Amongst them were descendants of the Pharaoh, two deities of destruction, gods of destruction. This obviously dropping on Taima like a giant pile of bricks. However, he is also just as equally interested as he is concerned about what a god of destruction is. Essentially, to summarize what Mirai is saying here, Genzai has been thrown into a panic since that day, believing that someday he would inevitably be dethroned and defeated. Mirai saying that Taima is the answer to his panic. he has been grooming him since the day he arrived on the planet to make him the strongest warrior and to test his loyalty to Genzai, in the hopes that one day he will be his ultimate spear and shield to protect him from anyone that dares to dethrone Lord Noob. Going on to further state that apparently Genzai, or Lord Noob, is actually growing very, very weaker as the years and decades roll by, and apparently Brood has more potential than the first generation, and that his sons have even more potential than the both of them. Going on to say that without the God Water, Lord Noob is not certain if he would be able to defeat Brood, and he used this fight between the two of them to test the hidden potential and true power of them both. Taima, obviously stunned by this sudden influx of information, asks Mirai what's so special about him. Mirai essentially explaining everything that we already know, or at least have a general idea about Taima, that he grows stronger with every passing day, and with an extremely fast pace. Every battle and every scar, every wound only making him stronger and stronger, and that the Pharaoh has noticed. And that after this last battle with Brood, his potential has even skyrocketed even further. He could sense, even from as far away as he is now, that while he was imprisoned, he only got stronger and stronger as his limits were broken. And he's quite certain that the Pharaoh felt it as well, going as far as to say that he has the same unlimited potential as Brood's sons. And when the Pharaoh realized this, he truly believed that he could control his power to achieve his own ends. Taima, more angry than he's been in a long, long time, states that he will pay for what he did to his mother, and he will just pay in general. However, Mirai has the good news for once. Mirai being quick to quell the young man's rage, stating that his mother yet lives, and that perhaps the Pharaoh was bluffing, although he could also be using her as a weapon. Taima is very relieved and immediately wants to head out to save her, although Mirai states that he is not ready to defeat the Pharaoh. He has much to learn and that he needs his help as well. Unfortunately, he is not as powerful enough to destroy the Fountain of Gods as he once was. Mirai offering to train him in the ways of his people. To prepare for the battle ahead, Mirai offers to train him in the art of Heki. This being a special form of magic that uses ki as an energy source in order to perform it. With Taima's limited potential, as Mirai says, it's going to be one of his more reliable tools against the Pharaoh to help take him down, of course, after they destroy the fountain. Taima reaffirming that he will do anything to save his mom and that he is ready. Mirai taking in this news wonderfully, he says to hold on and that he is going to teleport them. And in another sudden flash, they now hover above the city of Su. And I gotta admit, this is one hell of a good-looking city. Upon landing, Mirai simply says to relax for the day. He has much to learn in the coming days. Go and explore the city, he says. So, taking this time to explore and bask in the city, walking amongst the common man, and really taking in the sights. Eventually, however, he runs into an old friend of Russo. He hasn't seen him in quite a long time. Russo going on to explain that his dad got locked away for taking up for the side of the Thoth, and that ever since then, the Thoth have been taking care of him here, and the only thing he has to remember him by is his sword. Russo being quick to point out that Taima has changed a lot since they last met. Like a lot. Like about 3 feet worth of change. Although this immediately stirs up memories of the time he saw a giant monkey parading around the cities, and immediately he turns his sword onto Taima, asking if he's gonna turn into a monster again. Although upon hearing that Taima is not in recollection of these memories, he just decides to bury that hatchet and not to bring it up again, lest he have another monkey man running around this city instead of the other one. The two of them get to catching up in the best way possible, over food and over drinks. Taima actually having a real sincere moment with Russo, stating that he's probably one of his first friends ever, and without him, he would be dead. Russo going on to say that basically it was Mirai the one that saved him, since without him, he would have probably never found him, and he knew exactly where to find him. Taima actually finding this rather nice to hear from his new master. Although still, he goes on to say that regardless, he is one of his closest and possibly his first ever real friend. And in a rather bittersweet moment, Taima basically vents to Russo, saying that he tried to make friends growing up, although the vast differences between him and his fellow peers made it a lot harder for him to connect. Although Russo, quick to cheer up Taima, offers him more food and drinks to really dig in. And they basically just blast the rest of the night away, just relaxing, having fun, and just having a good old grand time all the way until the morning. Mirai awakening Taima for the good work that's ahead, now standing in front of a large pyramid structure. Immediately picking up with chapter 6 of the manga, we see that Taima and Mirai are in front of one of the great monuments of the Thoth. Crown jewel of City Su, you could say. The casing stones of the Great Pyramid. They are angled in a certain way where they perfectly shine like a mirror. Taima being quick to point out that he might have gone overboard hanging out with Russo last night, everything being very, very bright to poor Taima. Although a rather random question pops out of Taima's mouth about where do they get their power, he can almost sense it in the air. Mirai essentially going on to state that their positioning along the Nile, a special mineral that's found in the ground, and certain combinations of those two factors allow them to harness the energy of the world around them. Essentially through a long chemical process, wireless electricity is pumped through the air, which allows nearby electronics to pick up the signal, quote-unquote, and broadcast, again, quote-unquote, energy to the source. Taima obviously being very lost in conversation right now, as I'm sure that in his civilization, he's never come anywhere near as close to technological developments such as this. It's essentially created a utopian paradise amongst the Thoth, and that it's only real possible with their people. Mirai seemingly noticing Taima's not necessarily lack of interest, but almost loss in his words. He's quick to point out that he's used to more discussing with his own kind and less other people. The Thoth in general not really having a greedy bone or selfish bone in their body. That's why his people, specifically Mirai, have such a real big problem with the way that Genzai or Lord Noob runs the show. It may make his people strong, but they also suffer for his actions. Taima quickly interjecting that he probably doesn't care. Although Mirai actually says that maybe once upon a time he did, and that he actually used to help and want his guidance. Although one day, he seemingly changed upon the realization that his brother's future has always been particularly dark. He couldn't see past a certain point in Genzai's life, and once they reached that point, he almost changed on a dime. He stopped caring about him, his people, and only cared about himself and his own self-interest. Mirai having a certain idea of what happened, although he's sure that one day he'll know for sure, but they have much more important things to worry about. Mirai bringing Taima forward to a structure known as the Room of Spirit and Time, going on to say that behind these doors, time works differently to everything outside of them, and that he must prepare for what's about to come. Once he enters the room, he won't be leaving it until he is prepared, stating that Taima will never be the same again afterwards. Although this does not concern Taima in the least, as he is eager to get started. Once inside the room, Mirai shows Taima the Book of Thoth. The book containing the sum total knowledge of Mirai's people, and with it, Taima will have an extreme advantage in the coming battle. He'll be able to understand any language, and he may perceive future events. And with this book, Mirai hopes that this will help him master the art of Haki. After the questioning of Taima, Mirai goes on to explain that the art of Haki is the only real way he has to defeat the powers and threats ahead. Sheer brute strength isn't just gonna cut it here. He's gonna need to have advanced techniques if he's gonna even have a chance of defeating the threats that lie ahead. Mirai not only intends to train Taima's physical body under these intense conditions and training, but to also expose his body to different forms of energy to see how it reacts, and eventually hoping that he will be able to learn to manipulate any form of energy as if it was his own life energy. And to expect that out of a single book, you'd be reasonable in assuming that it doesn't live up to that level of potential. However, Mirai is quick to point out that it may look like a single tome, but it actually has the total sum knowledge of 36,525 books in total. Mirai being quick to quell Taima's fears after he asserts that he may not even be able to do that. Mirai simply telling him to not stress, as he is going to bless him with the ability to read a page instantly, and then he could start his own studying from there. However, there's one tiny little snag. The book is cursed. Mirai stating that anyone besides him that attempts to read the book will suffer some mysterious turn of fate that will happen to them, and that the curse is unfortunately irreversible. He did this in an attempt to ward off his brother or any other greedy individual from seeking this knowledge for evil purposes, and that whatever happens to Taima, he'll be there for him. Although Taima reasonably is quick to point out that this is a little late to be telling him something this drastic. But Taima, ever the trooper, presses on forward regardless of the stakes put in front of him. Mirai, officially starting Taima's training, presses a single finger to Taima's forehead, instantly blessing him with the capacity to read the book. And as Mirai walks away to let Taima do his thing, Mirai simply states that he will never be the same again. An indeterminate amount of time later, we see that the barrier protecting the city has fallen. Although fortunately enough, Taima appears to be done as well. Dramatically slamming the book, he arises a new man. Mirai is delighted to see the fruits of Taima's labor, as he will now test his new abilities. But before they get to that, he has a surprise for Taima. He gives Taima a gift of his own special clothing, which are super light and conform to any shape or size. With this, it officially means that he is one of them. Giving Taima another gift of a cape that is completely indestructible. It's one of the most heavily enchanted items in the Thoth's history. Including himself, several other enchanters gave their work to this masterpiece. And now we have Taima's complete look. He looks rather dashing, if I do say so myself. But there's no time to bask, as he must immediately get to work. Stepping out into the real world, and probably the first time in a long time, he immediately senses that something is afoot down in the city below, as we see a thief running through the streets away from the Thoth's guards. Although Taima, demonstrating some of his new powers, grabs her out of mid-air without even touching her. Escape being quite impossible in the situation that she is now. And within an instant, Mirai already has the device that she had in her arms. The disc, as she calls it. Mirai appearing to be rather perplexed and curious as to his brother's next move. Although perhaps immediately afterwards, an earthquake is felt throughout the city, as both Taima and Mirai feel an approaching presence. The thief in question appearing to be quite addled to what's about to happen. Taima, in a moment of sympathy and empathy, knowing that she's only doing what she's being told by the pharaoh, and, well, we all know what happens when they defy their king. Letting her go to take shelter in the city, acclaiming that tonight a king dies. Absolute and utter chaos is befalling the city as the earthquake engulfs the coast. However, through the waters they see a rising figure. Well, I guess a figure is not the accurate statement to use here. Being more some sort of monster, as it menacingly rises above the waves and waters below. Once it reaches its full height above the waters, Mirai is quick to point out that this is the king of the Nile, and Genzai is confidently seated on the crown of its head, looking down on the victims below. Despite the rather dire circumstances of this event, Taima is actually excited. And with a perhaps mix of confidence and pride in his newfound abilities, he states, "This should be fun." And well, with that, we'll leave it there. That's Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 of Dragon Ball Infinity, and once again, I have to give a special thank you to Jordan Lee for allowing me the privilege of reviewing his manga on my channel. Also, before people pointing out, yes, I know, I left out a certain part of Chapter 5 during the video. However, for one part, I think you should go read it yourself because it has some amazing art and actually ties into Dragon Ball pretty well in my opinion. But moreover, there is a specific reason I left it out in this particular review. I can't really say the reason, but there is a reason. So don't worry, it will be covered on the channel, at least somewhat, eventually. But for now, we'll leave it right there. Tell me, what did you think of Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 of Dragon Ball Infinity? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, I'll get to them when I can. And special thank you again to Jordan Lee for letting me have the opportunity to review his manga with his manga page stills on screen. But with all that out of the way, I want to thank you for joining me on today's video once again. And as always, don't forget to take time out of your day to stop and smell the roses. Till our next story, goodbye.